Now, it's the time for the talk called Mixed Realities in the Era of Metaverse. How will e-learning evolve? By Mr. Chuah Kee Man from Unimas. Before we begin, a little bit about Mr. Chuah Kee Man. He is a senior lecturer at the Faculty of Language and Communication, majoring in educational technology, computational linguistics, learning sciences, and instructional design. He has won several awards at national and international levels for various innovations in teaching and learning, as well as assistive technology. He was also the recipient of Unimas Academic Award for the Teaching Award category in 2014, as well as Best E-Learning Facilitator at International University E-Learning Carnival 2016. Previously, he served as the Deputy Director, Teaching Excellence 2018 until 2020, and the E-Learning Coordinator 2016 until 2018 at the Center for Applied Learning and Multimedia. I am now pleased to invite Mr. Chuah Kee Man to begin the session.
Thank you, Noratika, Ms. MC. Thank you to the organizing team for getting me on board for this, this year's 10th anniversary of the festival. And I hope everyone can hear me clearly because, I don't want to be talking to myself. All right. Okay. Let me just share my slides. Okay. It's outwardly quiet, every time we do online session, it's like you're talking to yourself. Okay, so I'm gonna share mine. All right, I think that should be available. Let me just put on the chat as well. Okay, all right. So if you have any questions in between, or if there's something that you need to ask or to kind of comment, you just post it in the chat. From time to time, I will be checking, the chat just in case, so that you don't have to wait until the end. Sometimes we have a lot of things in our mind, so if you want to ask, just quickly ask. All right, so the title of my sharing today will be Mixed Realities in the Era of Metaverse, and how will e-learning evolve. The earlier title given to me is slightly similar, just that I kind of put the metaverse inside because I think the interest of metaverse is kind of growing in the past 2 years, especially when Facebook has decided to go all out on this. And I don't know whether it's a good decision or not, but I personally think they could be having a tough time, right? But anyhow, let's not go into that part, but let's focus more on what we can do with mixed realities when it comes to teaching and learning. I believe most of you are educators, and perhaps there are some students as well, and you might want to also look at it as a tool for you to learn and to produce something for your own experience, right? So before we go further, I think it's good to clear things up, because I know there are a lot of confusion when it comes to this R. What R it is: VR, AR, MR, XR. All right, so you might be hearing a lot of people talking about virtual reality, which is the famous one, VR. And then there's also the common one, AR, which is augmented reality. And then slightly more recent one will be MR, which is mixed reality. And if you combine everything, then you can create a world where all the virtual reality and augmented reality and even real life mixed together, it becomes an extended reality. So you can see here it's at the top, right? So just in case you're curious, augmented reality is we overlay something on the physical world. Basically, you have something on the real life. I think this one you have a lot now. If you're into games, Pokemon Go is a perfect example of augmented reality game, because it overlays the Pokemon on the real world, right? Mixed reality is a mix of both. Later on, you'll see some sample. And virtual reality is also quite easy to to imagine virtual reality be basically something which is not really real, totally not real, right? Fully immersive. For example, those who are into games, if you're playing all this role-playing games, then you realize that you are actually in a virtual world. That is already counted as a virtual reality. Just that the immersive level depends a lot on the gadgets or on the, on the peripherals that you have, right? So just to kind of sum up using this nicely created kind of like chart by this group called Interaction Design, there's a low immersion here, the scale here, the continuum. So you have high immersion. Basically, high immersion means you really need to use all this head-mounted gear, all these devices, and also supporting tools to make sure that you're into that world. So that is high immersion. And you have low immersion where you are just overlaying things, which is quite common as well. So anything which is in between, then it can be mixed, right? And if you combine all this, becomes a good world, then it becomes an XR, which is extended reality. In fact, the metaverse is an example of extended reality, right? So if it's like you extend the physical world and beyond, and it becomes an XR, which is basically a metaverse, the idea of metaverse. So different naming, but then this is a clearer diagram to show you, the difference between the common one, the VR, AR, MR, and XR. Of course, there are newer terms these days, but I think it's good enough to focus on this for, or else you'll go crazy trying to understand what is all these types of, different forms of VR. To me, they are all virtual, right? In a different sense. It's just that because of the low immersion, people don't like to call it VR because it's not really virtual. It's still half. So they call it augmented because it's like you are mixing the physical world and you overlay with something. But there's always a confusion between mixed reality and augmented reality, because augmented reality to a lot of people is still mixing. Later you understand what are the differences when I show you some example, right? But these are not really new. I've been saying this many times in a couple of my sharing. But why do I say it's not new? Because if you really track back the history or the evolution of virtual reality, you'll be surprised. This is the first patented head-mounted display done by Mr. Morten Hellig, which is one of the earlier person to think of this idea way back in 1957. And you'll be surprised that this kind of design still hold true until today. In fact, if you take a look at the recent head-mounted display, it's still more or less the same, kind of like the same concept of playing around with your eyes, your visual, and putting something in front of your eyes just to manipulate the visual so that you feel like you are actually in a different world, right? So you see, the thing about a lot of our user interfaces, you'll be surprised. It has been around in 1957, but why are we in 2022 still talking about this thing? And it's not really a widespread thing. It's not really like into your classroom, or it's not even widely used in our normal life, right? Because the problem is the user interface itself. Until now, a lot of companies are still struggling to find out what other ways to replace this kind of concept. Up until now, everyone is still limiting the idea of a user interface with this kind of design since, for how many decades already. So until we find a different interface, as in a different way of dealing with AR and VR, then we will probably be still stuck in this kind of mindset. A good example would be keyboard, right? A computer, long time ago, I mean, when computer was introduced, it was supposed to be not only more powerful in terms of their computing speed, but it's also something that human look forward to kind of transform the way we do things. But as you realize, the first computer introduced has no keyboard, right? Has no keyboard at first. But then because you're so familiar with the typewriter, that we have long time ago, suddenly there's a keyboard for the computer. And that kind of interface where we need to punch things on the physical keyboard to input something stuck until today. This is something called in technology as something that we lock in, that we don't want to change. Until recently, of course, we have smartphone where you turn that keyboard into a soft version. But still, if you take a look at the soft keyboard, they are still the same. Looks the same, with the same concept of, using the QWERTY kind of method where you're supposed to follow the sequence. And then they change to swiping. You don't have to punch, you just have to swipe. All these are still something that we call in certain technology, because of our human behavior, we tend to stuck to this kind of lock in kind of concept, right? And once we lock into that kind of concept, it's very hard for us to move on. And because of that, technology seems to be stagnant for a while, right? So it's not new. You can see here, VR has been around by NASA and all that. They actually use it to train astronaut long time ago. I mean, long, not so long because it's 80, but it feels long, 40 years now. But way before they trained astronaut, VR was used to train pilots, which is until today. The first simulator built in the world of aviation was done in 1929. How many years ago? I mean, almost a century ago, right? So it has been evolving, but why is it easier for example, for a flight simulator to be built? Because it's kind of, you don't really have a lot of pilots to be trained at one time. Probably you have about maybe 5 or 10 pilots to be trained at one time. So it's kind of easier to replicate this kind of simulator and to be used. Even astronaut as well. You don't have to train thousands of astronauts. You have to, probably train maybe 10, at one time. So it's easier to manage small numbers of training using all these gadgets. But imagine if you have to train thousands of doctors in a short time, you can't afford to spend so much, because the scalability of VR at that time, even until now, is still quite problematic. Imagine if your university, IMU, is required to invest on VR based simulation. The most you could invest probably 10, right? But you have so many doctors waiting in line to be using it and all that. So these are the issues that is still bothering all the developers and manufacturing of VR technology or creators of VR technology until now, right? So what changes in fact, the concept is evergreen, I would say. If somebody can think of it 50 or 60 years ago, why are we still talking about VR, or why are we thinking that VR and all these are still new? It's not new. The concept is old, but what changes in fact is the technology. As you can see just now, the head-mounted display. What changes is what was displayed or what is displayed in front of our eyes. Last time maybe it's very pixelated, maybe black and white. The same thing that we talk about for camera. Last time we probably just take certain type of pictures or photos. Now we can take more advanced photos. We can even take 3D photos. Those are the things that change, but the concept remains the same, which is to merge. I call it fantasy. Some people don't like the word fantasy, but to me, if you create a virtual world, which is not real, it's a fantasy. All right. Just like all this science fiction and all that, if you are into the world of Star Wars, for example, it's a fantasy, right? You are just fantasizing that there is a different world called, in a galaxy far, far away. Those who are into the Marvel movies, the same thing. If you are imagining that there are a lot of superheroes among us, all this superheroes living with us, that's a fantasy world, right? So basically it's this human nature of wanting to go beyond the reality by merging these two. But what changes is the technology that we have today, and then came this one, metaverse. So with all the craze of virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed realities and all that, recently we kind of being bombarded with this concept of metaverse, and everyone's saying, what is metaverse? You probably heard of multiverse. Don't be confused. Multiverse is multiple universe. That's another concept. In religion, there's also a concept of multiverse. In certain ideology or philosophies, there's also multiverse, but this one is metaverse, right? Meta, as it is, I think we know meta means beyond, right? Beyond or going after something. So if you say, like, for example, meta-analysis means you are outside of all these things and you try to do an analysis or try to analyze something from a bird's eye view. So you are like beyond, like a super being trying to look after something. So the metaverse concept is more or less the same, where you have a world, everyone can come together and work together as if you are in a different world, right? So that's called metaverse, but it's not new. Again, it was first introduced. In fact, the word metaverse was introduced by this author, Neil Stephenson. This is one of the earlier science fiction that triggers a lot of other newer one, like Ready Player One and all that. If you have watched the movie, that's the same concept, where you are, you are into all this virtual world where you are transformed or teleported into somewhere else, right? Using all this technology that we have. So it's not new. That's the reason why Facebook had a problem to register the name Metaverse at first. In fact, they had a hard time trying to register the name Meta. They had to buy it from someone because it's not really a fresh thing. It has been there for many, many years, all right? In fact, there are many variants, right? Later on, we'll take a look at this, right? So some variants of Metaverse. Before Facebook, or now known as Meta, introduced this thing called Horizon World before they changed to, last time they call it Metaverse due to the reason that they couldn't register the name Metaverse. They changed it to Horizon World. So if you hear people say Horizon World, as that's the Facebook Metaverse, right? I'm sure you have seen the video and all that. You can Google later on. Just Google Horizon World on YouTube and you can take a look at it. Unfortunately, until now, they have not allowed Malaysian to register. If you take a look at the list of companies where, list of countries, residents of certain countries that can register, Malaysia, unfortunately, is still not in the list. Although a lot of people, even me included, had I had entered into this Horizon World using virtual private network, but the issue was once Facebook detected that we use VPN, we will be banned. In fact, I was banned. So yeah, my bad. But I was just too curious to try out. But later on, maybe once they release it to Malaysian, then you will see more people coming into this so-called metaverse. I'll explain how it works later. But prior to all this, we have been hearing a lot of things called Second Life. I'm not sure how many of you have seen this, but those who are into virtual reality or virtual simulation and all that might have heard of Second Life before. It was launched in 2003, right? How many years ago? Almost 20 years ago. And it was the first attempt to create a world where everyone has a virtual self. That's why it's called a Second Life. You have a second life in that world called the world of Second Life, right? Where you have your avatar. You can do whatever you want there. You can build houses, you can buy things, you can enter university, like what's happening here. They just go to university and study, and you can get certification. Some university actually offer certification through Second Life way before MOOC was introduced, way before micro credential was an in thing. Back then, Second Life was a hub for a lot of universities to, especially those in Europe, to offer certification through Second Life, where you have to attend classes like this and you get a certificate and all that. And you can grow in that life. You can buy things, you can become rich, and whatever you want to do there. So it's a Second Life. But that concept seems to be not really doing well at that time, even until now. Again, due to the acceptance of that concept. All right, so it was more popular in the European countries, not so much in other parts of the world. But the same concept was kind of, to me, copied, by Facebook. And then where Mark Zuckerberg clearly says that they wanted to create a different world called Horizon World. So the same concept, actually, just the Horizon World doesn't really focus on one thing like education. They focuses more on the workplace first, right? On the working environment and all that, where people can come together and work together without being there in the office, and so on. So these are all the current trend. But to be honest with you, the real metaverse now, which is popular way before this Meta, there's another M, right? And it's called Minecraft. To me, Minecraft, in fact, a lot of researchers and even the educationists recognize Minecraft as the first metaverse. Because Minecraft, if you have, if you're into Minecraft, or if later on you can do a bit of research, it's the same concept. You can build things there. It's decentralized. Nobody owns Minecraft. You can log in from anywhere. You can create your own world. You can invite friends. Everyone can come together. The only reason why people don't think Minecraft is that metaverse because of the design, where block block-based, the pixelated and all that. But Minecraft is a perfect example of how metaverse should work. We need, meaning to say, people from different places using a decentralized server and come together and do things together. You can do whatever you want. You can play games. You can create challenges. A lot of school or universities also create their own campuses on Minecraft and so on. Of course, after Minecraft, then there's Roblox. Same concept, but different design in a way. Same concept where people can come in and do whatever they want, build things, and there's no really restriction on what you can do, right? So you can see there's so many variants of metaverse. And recently, of course, we have Gather Town, and the one that you're using for your festival is called Kumo Space. These are also claimed to be metaverse in a way where everyone comes together at a centralized place, but using decentralized manner, meaning you don't own that place. If you own, means that thing is hosted somewhere and everyone just go to that place, right? Like, I have a house, you come to my house. That's not the concept of metaverse. Metaverse means everyone own a piece of that house, but you can just create it from different places. So it's very meta to understand this, but I personally don't think these two are metaverse yet, because it's still owned by the company. In fact, it's very centralized at the moment, right? It's not really decentralized. The good example of metaverse is still Minecraft, right? And of course, Horizon World will be the thing. Okay, why am I telling you all this? Because by understanding the different different interpretation of metaverse, you'll be able to kind of figure out, for educators or for learning designers and all that, you'll be able to figure out what best fits into your teaching and learning process. You don't have to do something ambitious that you want to fit the whole world. You don't have to. So I would say, instead of focusing on the metaverse, you can just create a mini-verse, right? Like, a good example would be you have your university, a physical one. You can have an augmented one, or a virtual one on some places that you like. So it becomes like a second campus online, where you have your students going in and all that. So this, I think, would be, in fact, it's happening now. I foresee one day we don't need LMS anymore, because every time, at any point I want to check out my courses, or what my lecturers put up and all that, I can just log into places like Gather Town. I go into that my lectures area, and then I just find out what was uploaded and all that. So it no longer using the typical interface of a learning management system, which is very old school type, where you go and click all the links and that kind of thing. So this will be probably one of the changes that will be happening in the world of e-learning. All right. So mixed realities. Now, I like I said about the Minecraft problem, is that interface, the design. People don't like it in a way, because adults think that these are too childish. But the users for Minecraft, majority of them are 35 to 45 between this age group. So they are not really young, young in that sense. Majority are that group. Why? Because those are the generation that was first introduced to that concept of using Minecraft and all that. But because of that interface, people are trying to change it. In fact, you can see why Facebook started off with this kind of using avatar, right? Even Apple uses all this memoji and all that. Why not just our human face? Why not just our actual 3D realistic? You'll be wondering, right? My own research, and also if you check out some research on avatar or even on persona, human dislike ourselves, our features in a different world. In a way, like, we want to be better, we want to be someone different. That's something weird about us. If I see my own face in a different place, I don't want that. In a way, I like seeing my another self, a realistic self, moving around, Horizon World. It will be very intimidating. So we would rather have another avatar with a different design, different hair color, different skin color, different shirt and all that. Ask yourself, when you create avatar for yourself, right? Very rare you want to really resemble totally like you. You totally change it, make yourself thinner. Some of you maybe make yourself even bigger and all that, because you want to have a different taste of your personality. So this is something weird that is happening, which is why realism is not really something that they strive for, right? I'll explain that in detail in a bit. But yeah, the good thing is Because of that trouble of realism and all that, people are more moving into more on mixed reality. In fact, for Metaverse, the goal is to use mixed realities. They are not trying to change into that, you know, avatar like the cartoon like kind of stuff. They want to do something like this. So you just merge between, you know, whatever you have with the materials that you have in this, you know, virtual form, and then just overlay on top of the physical world, and you can do something about it. Now, just now I told you the difference between mixed realities and augmented reality. The one key difference between these two is interactivity. AR normally has minimal interactivity, normally limited to point and click, you know, like point, click, that thing pop-ups, loads, that's it, that's AR. But if you can do more than that, like if I can, you know, like what's have shown on the slide here, if I can rotate the motor, I can change the speed, I can move it around, I can spread it out, you know, and, you know, put it in a different angle and all that. That is mixed realities, because the interactivity is higher. You can interact with a virtual object or virtual element way beyond just AR, because AR means it's just an overlay. So if you overlay a 3D 3D cat, for example, right, a 3D cat, the cat is just like that. Probably you can just, you know, touch the cat and all that, but that's it. You can't really do much with that particular virtual or 3D cat. But for mixed reality to work, you have to go beyond that. I'll show you some sample later, don't worry. All right. Oh yeah, the sample is here. So this is an example of mixed realities, and which is the way forward now. In fact, any one of you who are interested into building you know, AR or VR material should start with MR, because it's quite easy to implement. You just have to add more interactivity to the AI element, and you can go to this link to download this toolkit. For those who are interested, of course, not everyone is keen to this, but if you're interested to build your own mixed reality toolkit, I will not demonstrate because it requires installation and all that, and you might have problem installing because of the you know, your whatever devices that you're using to follow this today. So it's more suitable for a hands-on, like a real physical workshop, maybe in the future. But I just show you how it looks like. Sorry, let me just check my sharing, whether I didn't share audio. So let me just reshare. All right. Okay, so that would be easier. Wait, so okay, can you see? All right, so because I didn't choose the sound just now, I didn't take the sound, so you might not be able to hear it. Okay, let me just can't remember whether there's sound. Maybe this one does now, right? Because of the thing. Ah, yeah, a bit of sound. So if you are you know, interested, this particular toolkit will help you to build something like this, where it's mixing different things. Of course, this is just a sample. What happened is you can actually do more like the hand manual. You can see here, your hand can transform, your hand becomes a UI and all that. And this is called mixed reality because it's beyond just overlaying. So if it's just overlaying, right, and you can't really do much, that's AR. But once you can do things like manipulation and all that, then it becomes a mixed reality. All right. So this is an example of what you can do with the toolkit. Of course, it's not like drag and drop. You still need to design the 3D element and all that, but it's a good start for those who are keen to try on this kind of you know, materials for your creation, right? So, and it's free, it's open source. This one is powered by Microsoft HoloLens. Microsoft HoloLens is also another headgear that you can try in the future, but you don't have to use that HoloLens to create content like this, because you can create it using your PC, all right, for example, And then, of course, you kind of need that lens, to the HoloLens or the headgear, to test it out, right? If you don't want to invest yet, you can just create first and then ask people to test it. But of course, having one would be nice for you to try and test, right? So this is example of, in fact, this is not new. This is like 3 or 4 years ago. So it's already there, right? What is lacking now, of course, is just the content. What else can be done? And you can see it really feels like what you see in the movies, right? Like a good example would be, like Iron Man, right? If you watch Iron Man, you can see all this overlaying stuff appearing on the physical world. That's mixed realities kind of concept. It looks unreal in the movie, but it's kind of possible, but maybe not that advanced yet, right? But possible, right? So this is called mixed reality toolkit. So how do we actually see, or how do we actually appreciate the potential of mixed realities in teaching and learning? So for this particular session, I kind of divide into 4 parts in checking into all this, AR, VR, whatever we are talking about today. So whenever you are encountered with whenever you encounter something about AR, VR, mixed realities, it's always good to think about at least these 4 things, right? For teaching and learning, of course, because there's a pedagogical part here. So first one is reality, right? Like I mentioned just now, there's always this issue of realism, realism of the objects, persona, environment, right? Object especially, the 3D objects, or even yourself as a persona, whether you really need to look like an actual human being, or it's good enough for you to have a cartoon-like figure to represent you, much like all those things that you have now, emoji and all that. Those are all augmented stuff, but cartoon-like, right? Even Facebook avatar and all that, those are cartoon-like. So do we really need that kind of realism? Because the more real you want it to be, more time is needed, more resources is needed, because you can't really just create some 3D person that overnight and all that. I mean, that easily. So you probably need to consider this first, whether it's needed in your case. For teaching and learning, for example, let's say if you are teaching only certain concept or certain aspect of an element, then you probably don't need the body and all. You just need that object. So that would kind of limit your scope a bit, so that you are not really spending too much time on creating other things. Later on, maybe we'll try 1, 2 together. I mean, or maybe at least I can demonstrate to you how does that work in AR and all that, right? Then the second issue will be immersiveness. How immersive do you want it to be, right? If it's on the normal devices like mobile phone, desktop, or laptop and all that, it doesn't feel that immersive, right? Because you are really seeing what is shown to you, not really immersive. Immersive means you really need to wear that headgear and then put yourself into that, into that mode of engaging with the items or the object available to you. So immersiveness actually depends a lot on user experience as well. Also activation and manipulation of senses, just like how you watch movies, right? If you just watch a movie using your laptop, that's it, just play out loud using a speaker, it doesn't feel that immersive there, right? But if you go to a theater with all this 3D or 4D surround sound and with the moving chairs and all that, it creates a different types of immersiveness, even though you are just seeing still a flat screen in front of you, a bigger flat screen. But because of that manipulation of senses, your immersiveness improve, right? So this is something that the VR world is trying to overcome as well. How to create the immersiveness apart from the visual. You can see, like I said just now, since the 1950s, people are still bothering about the eye. To put it simply, they are just manipulating our eyes. That's all. VR is kind of just doing tricks with our vision, right? They are not really putting you in a different world. They're allowing you to see that thing differently. Basically, you are still here. Basically, you are still standing and all that. But the way they manipulate the graphic like the 360 or whatnot, or even they use the skewed VR look and all that, makes it feel like you are in a 3D world, but actually everything is flat, for example, right? So is this thing. The earlier patented head-mounted display I showed you just now actually comes with smell as well, which until now, a lot of companies are still figuring out what to do with this, because smell is another issue that cannot be easily create, right? How do you create different types of smell just to have that kind of immersiveness? So also, if you notice as well, all these VR headgear or whatnot are limited only to the two hands. The what do you call that? The handheld input device, right? Handheld one, left and right, right? That's it. There's nothing for the leg, right? There's nothing for the legs, nothing else for the body yet for the commercial one, of course. If you're talking about the the advanced one, yes, but the commercial one, they only have two hands, and also so they are manipulating your eyes or vision. Then they're just using your hand to point, which is the same way you are using the mouse to point things. But instead of using a mouse, you're just scrolling or tapping on that thing. But is that natural? It's not really natural, right? That's not how we point things. If you're talking about immersiveness, then I should be able to point using my fingers or anything, just like as it is. That's why they also have gloves, right? Some company come up with gloves type of gloves type of input, where you can just wear the gloves and then just point at things and all that. But in a medical world, for example, if you're creating a VR for surgery and all that, is that something which is natural, like using that pointing part? So that may not be something natural to you, right? Which points me to interactivity. This is the issue until now, because whatever design that they have at the moment is not really naturally humanistic. Meaning our interface at the moment, the glasses, the handheld things are just trying to have a superficial way of interacting with the object in the virtual world. It's not really something that we do naturally. So the real VR, the goal, the ideal VR would be we just be ourselves as a human being. Like, you just stand up, you just use your hand, use your movement, then you are able to enjoy or experience the virtual world as it is, which until now is not done yet. People are still working on that, but that is the ultimate goal of immersiveness. At the moment, all the things that you have at the moment are just playing tricks with our senses, right? So just to make it clear, so that's reality, something that you can consider, right? So I'm going to play this and then let you take a look and you tell me what you think of this VR. Oops, sorry. Okay, it's a short one. Okay, so what do you think of this? You can type in your comment in the chat or anything. So what do you think of this type of VR? It's like this is like the name of this VR is called Share Care You. You can search later. It's available on desktop version too, but when it's desktop version, you don't get to experience the the VR part. But tell me what you think of this VR. Based on what I just told you about that realism, interactivity, and also the immersiveness, right? Is there any skill activity doable in this VR? I do not see. There is. You can see here just now. Yeah, there's something for them to do, right? No blur. Okay, what else? So the realism is not there because no blur. Quite true, right? That was in fact, Mr. Hasnai point out my exact response. So where's the blur, right? Okay, what else? how would you normally learn about this, the anatomy of the heart without using VR? How would you normally do it? Sound is not synced with the movement. Yeah, because of the my play. You can search later, because I embed in my slides. But apart from the visual, like no blur and all that, what else? Oh, that's a different question. Can we get sick in the metaverse? Yeah, you can. Dr. Nilesh, anatomy is about knowing yeah, it's about knowing this. I just show you one part of it actually. The whole package here, is actually a whole human anatomy. It started with the human just now, this lady, for example. Just now, where's the image just now? It started with a lady, or with the man, your choice, right? And then when you open this booklet, it will kind of tell you if you want to skip or go straight to the part, or you can just try to kind of diagnose this lady and go from top to bottom. So it's a whole package, but I was just showing you one small part of it, which is the heart, right? And this is VR, by the way. What you're seeing now is a desktop view, right? But it's actually immersive in a way, like you are wearing the headgear. You can see why this person is holding this pointing part and all that. You can see whenever it pointed to the whole structure, you get to see the whole body actually. But once you zoom in, like now, this guy is zooming into the heart, but you go straight into that heart. And then whenever you go to any parts of the organs, you get to choose what you want to take a look at, things like this, right? So my question to you just now is, if you are basing it on the thing that I told you just now, like realism, interactivity, and also immersiveness, what do you think of this? Images are very microscopic, too small. Okay, what else? Many VR come okay, Dr. Niasha, many VR comes to us in IMS advertisement. While taking huge time to experience, we find that there is no learning experience as per learning outcome of a medical student. Yeah, I don't really quite get that, but I kind of, probably you are trying to say that there's no need for this, right? Right? Probably, right? Feel like lost in the jungle. Yeah, yeah. The people who prepare the VR do not follow. Yep, I would agree on that. Most creator of all these tools, right? They are not trained in teaching part, of course. They are not really trained educator. But I intentionally put this like this because this VR is like a teaching tool where it allows, it's like create all this 3D virtual anatomy and whatever, all these organs and all that. It allows educators to use it according to their own, whatever way you want to teach it. For example, the reason why I show the heart is because normally if you were to learn about the heart, probably we don't have to go into the heart, right? We don't really have to go into the heart, because even without VR, for example, a normal medical student or even doctor would probably just take a heart and then just cut it out. I mean, not a living one, of course, and then just to examine the the structure and everything, right? But you don't really need to view up until like what was mentioned here, the microscopic level, and it doesn't give you the holistic view because it's too zoom in, and you feel like you are just a tiny dust venturing into this. So the orientation of this is not really that good. So which brings me to this point just now. Interactivity. So what happened with a lot of VR design now is the problem with this one. They have amazing realism in terms of, the skin or whatever color and whatnot, but they have problem with this one. It's not natural. It's not something that we do. So probably going into the heart like that may not be useful, right? May not be useful. Okay, let's take a look at another example. Another example, this is also a VR, but it can be used by multi-users. And yeah, tell me what you think. Oh, sorry. So, yeah, it's halfway. Yeah, but to tell me what you think in general before, you can see, right, what's happening. Okay. Would this be more useful than the previous one? Make it easier for you. Yeah. Why is it more useful than the previous one? Okay. Simple. Yeah, because I show you halfway. What else? It follow process, one thing I think for this one, I mean, you can search later on. One thing about this one is the, how to put it, is the multi-user experience. The one just now is more like one person wearing that thing and then just explore on his own. This one, you can actually collaborate. You can see different people here, right? You can see different people here because they don't really show the real person, right? Just like a holographic kind of person here with a blurb and all that, and try to do things. And it gives a third person point of view, right? Not a first person point of view, as in like you go into that body and all that. You can move as an outsider and watch. Or if you are here, of course, you will be seeing here and you will be able to see your friend. It's like you are from a first person point of view as well. So you get to choose. You want to view like just now here. Like you want to view like this is a first person point of view, right? Because you're looking at yourself. You can also move out from that first person point of view and into a third person. Now, this is something that a lot of VR design should consider. Just like the one in Minecraft or even in Facebook Metaverse and all that, research has shown whenever we want to do VR, fully immersive VR, even though you can immersive yourself, feels like you're there, it's always good to have an orientation version where you can get out of that first person point of view and move out to this third person view. Because if you're first person all the time, you'll be lost, like somebody mentioned just now, because you don't know where to go, right? It's like everything seems overwhelming. But when you're in a third person mode, like like you're holding an avatar in a virtual game and all that, it's easier for you to navigate. Also, one thing that I noticed is anything which is procedural, anything which requires a memorization of steps and all that are more useful to be done in VR. Because if you want to do this over and over again, simulation or video and all that, there's no opportunity for try and error, right? Obviously, somebody can just record the video and show you, but you can't test it. There's no way for you to test it. And if you want to test it over and over again, you'll probably use too much of the materials, or you're gonna destroy some equipment and all that. So having this kind of VR based training or procedural guidance would be helpful in kind of minimizing all the things. The same concept why flight simulator for pilot are still precious until now, because you can simulate different condition, right? Different weather condition, different scenario, like when your plane is running out of gas and all that. This kind of issue. So if you think about VR as it is, or even AR and all that, you don't simply do it just for the sake of, like I told you just now, for the sake of it's VR or AR. You have to really think about whether or not the interactivity and all that really fits into what you need, right? So the reason why I show you this too is because of, just to highlight this part, because a lot of people focuses too much on realism and immersiveness. They forget about whether the interactivity or the thing that you're doing is natural, natural or even humanistic, according to your field, of course. If you're an engineer, I've been working with a lot of engineers as well in designing their VR and all that. Engineer, for example, when they learn how to do certain processes and all that, will require different view, right? They may not need that kind of microscopic view on certain nuts or bullets, bolts and all. They don't need that, right? Okay, so something for you to think about. Let me just, another one is feasibility. I saw some question. We're currently on the way to producing a VR which you when you should, so that's yep, that's a good one, right? Then once you decide the kind of realism that you need, right, or the kind of interactivity that you need, then you have to talk about feasibility, all right, or usability in simple way. You can see here another example of how this person is trying out this like disaster management kind of thing, or maybe trying to learn the procedure of escaping and all that, right? But the issue is always the toolkit, right? Because there's so many out there, so many software out there, and different different people will be selling you different things and all that. But again, always go for something which is my personal advice would be always go for something which is highly customizable, meaning you can customize it on your own. Like the one I showed you just now, the toolkit for the AR is open source and all that. You don't have to pay a single cent, and you're free to edit, you're free to customize and all that. So those are the kind of toolkit that you can try. But for new users or beginners who just want to try out the experience of creating something using AR and VR, you can try all this commercial software, which is free first, and take a look whether it's useful, because you don't want to waste your time creating something which is already there, right? You can just make use of existing things, just change it according to the way you want it to be in terms of your teaching and learning. The issue is always cost as well, and also bandwidth requirement, whether or not your graphics and all that can be loaded without using too much of a bandwidth and all that. Hardware, okay, do you need this kind of thing, or it's enough for you to try using the smartphone based kind of VR, where you just need to have that slightly cheaper kind of headgear, but you have to put your smartphone there and all that? Or do you need, with all this complete set of peripherals and all that, you also need to consider space, right, and how to set up, and also whether the PC or the whatever resources that you have meets the technical specification. Because normally all this VR toolkit, even though it's standalone, you probably need a good PC, a high-end PC with good graphic cards and all that, right? And of course, somebody asked just now, can you get sick in the metaverse? This one, health, right? I mean, this is the real sickness lah. The virtual sickness, of course, there's a different kind of different life kind of thing. But health here, I think the problem with VR, which is also why it doesn't really kick off after 1950s and all that, is because of this as well. Because a lot of medical research and all this in this area shows that VR is actually not really good for our health, especially for our eyes, and also spatial and orientation, because there's a lot of report about having all this visual right direct in front of your eyes. It distort your orientation, and if you prolong usage, can actually hurt you more than can harm you more than giving you benefit. So these are something that people are quite concerned as well. Another one is brain processing, because the way graphics behave on screen, it could be slower than usual, it could be faster than usual and all that, and our brains start to interpret speed differently. There's a lot of paper out there talking about our brain processing of time and the speed in the virtual environment or VR. For example, if you see, let's say a heart just now, the pumping just now, the heart pumping, if it's a normal heartbeat and all that, it wouldn't look or sound like that. So if you use it for a long time, your brain start to get confused. Is it the real one or the unreal one? You get what I mean? So it can create a lot of distortion to our processing as well. Of course, this is for prolonged usage. If you are just training it for a short time, then you'll be okay. Which is also why people don't really have to spend a lot on this head mounted display and all that. They would rather spend more on the content, right? The content, because you can still view it on the normal screen. You don't really need to be that immersive if you don't want to, right? Okay, these are some hardware as well. There's so many hardware now. Last time probably Oculus is like the in thing. Then now there are so many out there. These are like standalone. Standalone means on its own, and some need their smartphone. You know, you can also use tablet. These are already there. Like HoloLens is also quite popular now. PlayStation VR, Sony just released its own VR. This is mainly for games, but in PlayStation Store, PlayStation Game Store, there are also a lot of VR content for education, like all this training management, whatever training and that you have, they also make it available. All right, so that because there's so many options now, it's always gonna be the competitive battle between who can do better. But if you take a look at the design, they all look more or less the same, right? More or less the same. And I don't know. I personally believe maybe in the future, it will be smaller and smaller. In fact, Apple is trying to do that by, this is Huawei glass, by the way. You just plug this thing to your phone. So whatever content you have, it will display on the, like the eyeglass itself without any, any smartphone, whatever in front of you. It's just a screen, right? But it overlays, meaning you can see things, on the real world and all that. Okay. So some software, I'll give you a whole list later, but these are some that probably you can explore, which is already there. For example, like AR via Google. Google now has something called Google Lens. It's already embedded within your Google app. If you're using Android, you can just look for the icon on your Google search bar. There's a lens where you can just click on it, and then you can search many things, which overlays on the real world. But I think in Malaysia, there are a lot of options which are not available yet, but probably soon. But you can overlay things, right? And some people are creating content on this one as well. Okay. All right. This is another example of virtual medicine. All right, virtual medicine. You can see here. Yeah. Again, whether or not you need this kind of interactivity and all that, because it really depends on how you want to use this kind of tool in your teaching and learning. But it's already available, so you can see here, you can choose and all that, and all that. I don't have access to this, so if you want to try, you can just try for free first. Take a look what's available here, and see how it goes. Right? Sorry. Oops. This is one sample. Frame VR is a simplistic kind of tour. If you are doing something like a virtual tour, Frame VR will be a good example of free stuff that you can use, like gallery walk. Like you have a lot of things like posters and whatnot, and you want to have people walking around like a conference hall and all that. So you can use Frame VR. Okay, maybe just show you something like this, similar to Second Life, but it's slightly, how to put it, not that extensive, right? But you can try and use this. Okay, I'm not going to go through all, by the way, because more to like trigger your curiosity, and if you like to try further, you can. This is AR tool. This is also quite easy to use, called voxel.com. You can overlay things on the real world, right? This one maybe I'll show you, because this is quite easy to use, something that you can try later on. This one, all of you can try later. But this is AR, not really AR or mixed reality, not really fully VR, but it's quite easy to use, and you can create your own AR material in a short time, and then try it out later. Okay, so maybe I'll go to that since we are there. It looks like this. I just added something. So once you sign up for this so-called, you see, this company, they are very clever. They registered the trademark Metaverse earlier. So you can see just now the name of that tool is called Metaverse. So they kind of registered it. So Facebook couldn't do it. But the URL is gometa.io. What happened is it looks like this. So it's blank, right? So you can add new. then you can decide what are the things that you want to add. So if you want to create an AR, content for your course, like what I did is for my module, like how to put it, in my course notes, for example, I have QR code or certain markers on the note where student can just scan and then do some interactive things while we are doing testing and whatever activities that we have in the class, for example. So there are many options here. So you can do like poll or wall or whatever scene you want. Let's say if you have something, you just click on it and then add, then it becomes like this. If you don't like this, just delete, right? You can press on it. Then there are a whole collection of 3D stuff that you can use. Of course, you don't have to use all. You just choose the one that you like. Okay. So let's say I just simply choose one now, a birthday cake, right? And you can add sound, right? Let's say I use this sound, and then you can add a frame as well. You can add another one if you want to. So I mean, these are all just a sample. What happened is you can see here it's a 2 scene now, right? 2 scene. So what happened is when I overlay it, if I swipe, then I'll go to another one, right? So let's say if I have something to put here, I can, I can type, right? I can type or whatever. So once you're done, right? I mean, you can try it later, yeah, because we don't really have time to go through all this. So you can just publish, or you can test first if you want to. So just try this. I don't know whether you can see it. Let me just try here. Oh yeah, you need to download the Metaverse. I forgot. So you have to install the Metaverse app first, right? Metaverse app first, and then when you scan this one, this QR code, then you'll be able to see whatever you have here, right? So this is something that we have to think about as well, whether or not you will require user to use a different app, right? So I put that in one of the issue or in my slide as well. Later on you will see that. But again, you have to use a different app, put it on your phone. If you scan, then you're able to view all this. So if you are new to AR and you are interested to explore, this is something that you can try, right? There's something that you can try. Okay. I mean, I'm not going to go one by one, but I just introduce you how simple it is. So later on, you can explore further. All right. Okay, that's one. Another one is Blipa, which is also very popular, quite similar to this one, Go Meta. But Go Meta at the moment is free. Blipa is paid. I mean, this one free, but then there are certain limitation, but at least it's still free. You can still create some interaction and all that. Blipa is totally subscription based. You have to pay, right? A newer one is called, I don't know why it's called Skoggle, but the actual name is Classlet. This is one example of the future of learning management system, because it's like a metaverse style where you have to explore, study the courses and all that, right? Okay. Yeah, more on this link. So if you like to explore further, I put everything in this Wakelet, but you don't have to try everything, of course. I'm just curating everything in that list. So when you have the free time, you can just browse through, some of it and then explore and see which one is more suitable to you. I mean, the one that I'm introducing to you are all the simpler one, right? I mean, it's not really, it's not really the high end virtual world creation, except for the AR toolkit just now. But majority of these are quite easy to let you try and experience how to create something, right? Because all this while you are from the consumer side, right? You just consume all this material, so you might want to also experience how to create it, right? So you can try different tools that I show you. So this is the link. Later on, you can maybe I'll just type it in the chat just in case you are interested to save it. bit.ly /avr this. Okay. All right. So this is a complete list. The list look like this. Yeah, the whole list here. Yeah. If you have iOS devices like iPhone or iPad, this is also another good tool. Very straightforward. If you have iPad or iPhone, you can download this GigSpace by GigSpace Inc. They have a very simple tool to create AR objects and like animation and even to link to your whatever you want them to learn. All this overlay of quizzes or even tags and all that. So yeah, something for you to try. I mean, I'm not asking you to really build a world on your own, of course, because without experiencing how to create something, somehow we tend to think, oh, this is not useful for me and all that. But you try first, create something, maybe a simple one, right? Experience that, get the experience, and then see whether you can go on further, maybe build a bigger world. All right, okay, that's the two part just now, right? Feasibility. The first one is reality, and then feasibility. Now is the pedagogical part, right? Like I said just now, VR is not suitable for everything, right? But what I noticed is, if you were to check on all this research done on VR, even my own research, because I built quite a number of VR materials as well, using for road safety and all that, mostly for procedural stuff, because like I said just now, it's good for experiential learning. There are a lot of things that we cannot do in a class, especially like those learning about hazards and all that, because how on earth are you going to bring a student to like a like in a burning building and try to train them how to deal with that kind of disaster and all that, right? You can do that kind of simulation in real world, but then that would be costly as well, and time and all that. So sometimes using VR can kind of buffer that kind of reason, to give you more flexibility in creating this experiential learning, which is why I think a lot of VR these days are focusing more on that area, focusing more on the procedural stuff, step by step kind of thing, rather than like what Facebook was trying to do, moving your whole office into the virtual. I think there's no point to do that anyway. Why do I have to use a virtual keyboard in a metaverse when I can have a physical keyboard in front of me now, right? Why do I need to wear another headgear just to type something or type on Microsoft Word? I mean, there's no point to do that at all. But I might need that VR experience to go somewhere, that to learn how to, go to the nuclear plant, for example, learn how to identify certain problems and all that. So that would be more meaningful to be used with VR. The other one is called cognitive apprenticeship. The traditional apprenticeship is when you have a sifu or a master next to you, and then this master will be teaching you the physical, mentoring and modeling, right? Okay, you should do this, do that. That's the typical traditional apprenticeship, where you go to all this internship and all that, where students learn with another person, like a trainer or even the senior and all that, so they learn from each other. But again, the issue of numbers, right? If you have a lot of students and all that, you may not have time to do that. So this is where there's Dr. Collins, the Professor Collins concept of cognitive apprenticeship. So instead of doing it physically, there's a lot of cognitive apprenticeship modeling that you can do using VR, where like what you see just now, the procedure and everything, it feels like there's a person next to you. So you can create like a person, like what we normally get in game as well. When you enter the game, there's a person welcome you. Oh, welcome to this workshop. I'll be guiding you on how to do this. Right? There's like a real virtual, not real, like a virtual mentor with you. As you are doing something, there's voice telling you to do this and all that. So this is very, very useful. In fact, a lot of research has proven that cognitive apprenticeship increases the, not only in terms of learning satisfaction, but the attainment. Because once you go through one round, and when you meet the person physically, for example, or when you do it physically, it gives you a better opportunity to recall, because you have done that before, right? And then when you go to that practical part, no, okay, I've done this before, I know how to do this, blah, 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 that kind of thing. So that's called cognitive apprenticeship. Another one would be situated learning. Situated learning is like scenario-based or case-based. People like to use the word case-based. A lot of situated learning kind of VR is the 360 virtual world. I'm sure you have seen this kind of VR, where let's say you go to your lab in IMU, just go to your lab and take a panoramic image of that lab, right? And then you put it into the VR toolkit where it will kind of wrap it like a 360 view. Then you start to put in objects, you start to put in, quizzes and all that. So normally focuses only on one learning outcome per scene. One scene, one learning outcome. So that's situated learning, just to do that thing only, not asking you to explore, go into this, and no, just very, very specific, very case-based. So this is also very useful. So a lot of VR materials out there is situated learning based, where just do that thing, done, then you answer some quizzes, then you can take another assessment and all that, just to check whether you have done or whether you have learned something. Okay, so that's situated learning kind of concept. So the way I see it, VR is useful for all these three types of pedagogical intervention that you can do in your class. Again, it's supposed to be supplementary, not to replace. All right, I always repeat this. You are not going to ask VR and all this to replace you altogether, of course. You have to figure out in that particular topic or that particular module or that particular subject, which part do you think the VR can come in, right? Or which part of this mixed reality would be useful for your student to learn something, or maybe it's not useful at all, right? Good enough to have a virtual tour, that will be sufficient, right? So don't do something out of novelty. Novelty means out of because it's new, so I want to do it. And then when people ask you why do you have to use this, you can't really answer beyond that novelty part. So it's not really good, and so on. So you need to figure out why it has to be done that way, right? I go to the last one before I go to your question. I saw some question later on. I just finished this efficacy. So just now it was on pedagogy or pedagogical consideration, then efficacy. Now, efficacy here, I'm not saying that all these VR are good, but these are three things that you should at least focus on. Dr. just now, who was it? Dr. Nilesh, yeah, he mentioned about learning outcome, which is true. Whenever you want to evaluate whether a VR toolkit or hardware or software are going to be useful or not, you have to prioritize this one, whether or not it really achieve what you want them to achieve, right? Addressing different levels of skill set, especially. If you can do that without even using VR, then no point. You don't even have to use VR. But if there's certain skill set or knowledge that you think having VR will be really helpful, right, to enhance the understanding or achieving the outcome of the learner, then go for it. So I think this is one consideration. Another one is engagement. There are also the issue of engagement, as in there are certain concept or certain material or certain content which may not be attractive to the learners, as in maybe it's too difficult to understand, or maybe it's too abstract. So you probably need VR to kind of engage them, because normally with greater engagement, it will kind of lead to better outcome. Not all the time, but most of the time, because it's correlated with motivation. Imagine if your learners are suddenly engaged into learning something, right? Normally, it will also affect the outcome. But if they are not engaged, the outcome will not be that good, right? And the last one is behavioral changes. Another one is whether the VR will lead to some behavioral changes. Maybe not at your level. These are probably for primary school students or secondary school students, like primary school especially, which is why VR is not really encouraged. Children or even young kids, even up until 13 or 14 years old, you are not really encouraged to use VR, because it will really disturb your senses and your orientation. And normally it will also lead to behavioral changes. Like those who, play a lot of VR game and all that, they tend to disturb the way they react to things, because you are so familiar with this reaction. Like in the virtual world, the reaction speed is higher, right? For example, if you see some object thrown to you, the way you react to it could be faster, could be slower. So if you keep on using the VR, then it could disturb this kind of reaction time and all this. So it could also lead to negative behavior as well. You get angry easily and all that, this kind of issue, but maybe not so much of a concern yet for higher education. But these two are definitely the thing that you have to watch out whenever you want to, whenever you decide to use VR or mixed reality or all this thing, right? Okay, so yeah, so how will e-learning evolve in the next 10 to 20 years? Okay, based on what I have shared to you, looking at all this, wonderful possibilities. All right. I foresee these three basic things, at least the three things, the expectation. The first one, it will be cheaper peripherals, or I prefer embedded within existing tech. Imagine those days, whenever you want to scan a QR code, you have to download a different app, right? You have to go and download some app first before you can scan the QR code. These days, you don't need it anymore. I mean, the basic QR code, not the app dependent kind of QR lah. It's like the typical QR code. Now the camera itself, like your phone can scan the QR code. So that would be the way forward. In the future, maybe the phone or the gadget itself will be able to just augment or just show all this thing without having to wear, or maybe buy a new thing. It should be just embedded, right? Of course, supported by what we have in now, high-speed internet, 5G, because with 5G, the loading speed will be faster, the rendering will be faster, the interaction will be better. So with better interactivity, then your VR or mixed reality will be better, right? The second one is the one that I think even I myself is in the quest to do this, because I find that the existing toolkit available online and available now commercially or non-commercially are not really friendly still, or even the friendlier one are very basic, very simple. So I think what the industry is trying to do now is to create easy to use toolkit to create or for creating complex scenario. Because if you cannot do this, then your content will be limited to those, people who are not familiar with your field, right? You have to depend on other people to do it for you. And when you depend on other people to do it for you, normally it will not meet whatever you want, right? The same thing like web pages last time. You have to wait for the webmaster to edit. Now anyone can create a web page. You just have to learn how to use, simple tool like Google Sites and all that. You can create your own web page. Not like long time ago where you need the webmaster to amend, to edit. So things have changed. So same thing with AR and VR or even mixed reality. So hopefully there will be more easy to use toolkit and there will be more content available and you yourself can create and it can be customized for your own teaching and learning. And last one, which is the one I mentioned earlier, the LMS will be redefined. In fact, probably LMS will be no more, because if you kind of the full name of LMS is like learning management system, is that why are you still managing learning? We don't need to manage learning anymore. We just have to let learning flourish as it is. But then probably it will be a metaverse for learning. Like I said, people just log in, they just enter like a space. Imagine entering Kumo space, and then you just go in, you meet your lecturer there, a virtual one, and then there's a bookshelf. You can just take the materials and all that. Imagine that kind of system rather than click download, answer quizzes kind of LMS. So this will be something that people are striving to do, beyond the repository. Like right now, all the LMS system looks like a repository system, like everyone just dumping there, hoping that student will be able to go in and download, which I think majority will not be doing, except when you do quizzes and all that. So these are something that these are some of the things that we are hopeful or expected to happen in the next 10 or 20 years. So don't be surprised if people like Meta or Facebook and all that, they start to venture into all this area. In fact, social media are very fast in doing this. Even TikTok, for example, they have an AR toolkit for free, just like how they have the video editing tool CapCut for the video editing. TikTok has its own AR authoring tool within, so you can create filters and all that for free. That's why if you go to TikTok, those of you who are using TikTok, there's so many filters, and you can use all these filters to do wonderful educational stuff, like quizzes or even like overlay objects and all that. So I mean, things are moving towards that area where you are no longer required to log into a LMS, more to a metaverse to learn, right? Okay. Let me just go to some questions. Let me see there. AMEE. Okay, Dr. Nina said visited AME recently in France. We experienced some 3D interactive video by Michigan used to teach nursing students how to approach. What is your comment on the use of 3D interactive video? Yeah, same thing like the 3D panoramic images just now. Same concept. You can use it more for situated learning. The one that I told you just now. It's very useful for this one because it's really straightforward. You show that the 3D interactive video, right? And if possible, focus only on one or two learning outcome, not too many. Because if you start to have too many and it becomes like you mentioned just now, you're going to be lost and all that. So it's always good to use all this a panoramic 360 view or even virtual tour kind of stuff to be focused and limited to only certain skills or knowledge that you want them to learn. So very situated based, right? So yeah, I hope I answered that. Firdaus asks, can blind people use metaverse? Oh, you're still in the metaverse. At the moment, metaverse is because it's dependent on the visual, so definitely the blind cannot use. But they do have a blind accessibility function where you don't really see, you feel, because you can use the handheld, right? You can feel the haptic feedback and all that, but you only depend on audio. So as you navigate, you are just listening to the audio. You are not really looking at the visual. All right. I developed one VR game for the blind before. It's called what was the name again? I can't remember my own app. Not Orisma. Suddenly it lost my mind. I say AISAYS. That was like 6 years ago. ISAYS, AI SAYZ. The reason why I put ISAYS is because the way I designed that VR was the moment the blind students still have to wear the headgear, but the headgear is just used to use the the pointing thing, because as the student turn their heads and all that, right, that pointer will follow. So whenever they look at certain object, whatever object is in the virtual world, it will be said out loud. That's why it's called says. So let's say if the student turn to the left, there's a person there. So the person will say, "Good morning," blah, 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 something like that. So all audio based, but the visual is there for us to kind of view it for those who are non-blind to view it. But that was meant for the blind, for visually impaired learners. But again, issue of orientation. I get a lot of result from there, and a lot of because I did the test on my own student. I have 3 blind students at that time, and I work with the blind association as well. So a lot of problem with the orientation because they're so used to their own sensibility, like the sensitive detection of spatial and all that, and suddenly using that, it will distort them. So I decided not to pursue. That's why the app was never released, but it was just an experiment anyway. So it can be done, but not as effective. But I don't think it will work well as well, because like any technology, there will be issue with the special people, right? I mean, those with special needs. But Nilesh, again, we are trying to make LMS like that, making a series of boxes is about taking student. Yeah. That's a good attempt. I mean, we really need to move out of the LMS login, something like called login, because everyone, whenever you say LMS, everyone has the same concept of LMS. Going in, click the courses, see the slides, do the quizzes. It's a typical orientation that I think it's high time to change. Just change it to like a really normal behavior of how people will be able to learn. I mean, why can't we have a system like an online learning system which reflects the real world? Whenever we want to learn something, or whenever we want to ask our lecturer, we go to the room. I mean, go and meet, set appointment or something, or maybe do some group discussions with my peers and all. It should be that kind of learning management system, or that kind of e-learning system, rather than a system where we just dump resources hoping that you will come and learn, that kind of experience. So I still long way to go, but there's something that we should strive for. Any other questions just in case? I hope I covered whatever is necessary, but yeah. Anything else? Any one of you are interested in doing, mixed realities and all this? Mr. Hasnai, okay, you raised your hand. I saw your hand. Question,
Yeah,
yeah.
just want to seek your expert opinion. You know?
Yeah.
The future of this mixed reality, you're thinking going towards hardware based, like dependent, like with this, just now the image you pick up, or the left side one, like we just need a web smart device and web browser. What do you think?
I personally think for scalability or for widespread usage, the what do you call it? The whoever create all this content should focus more on the existing like the existing devices that they have, like smartphone or even tablet. But I think the future is something like this, slightly smaller version of all these headgear. But this would also mean that investment in that tool as well, even though it could be cheaper, but it's still a luxury for a lot of people, right? The cheapest you can go maybe is still quite a couple of hundred, with a plug into the phone as well, and the phone will cost you money. Like this one, a lot of teachers tell me that I built VR without any money because I use the box. I say, yeah, but the phone, you can't use the VR without the smartphone, right? The phone will cost you thousands, but the box might not cost you much. But luckily now, because of the more companies now, the phone will it's cost less. Like, I mean, like, you have quite good phones with good camera and all that can cost you less. So I think that would be the way forward, where if you want to talk about scalability to reach out to as many learners as possible, they should strive for all this smartphone based or tablet based first, before really going to all this. But I really hope they can really shrink it, which I personally look forward to Apple Glass, because Apple is working on it. They revive the Google Glass concept. Google abandoned the project because they were too ahead of time at that time. When they introduced Google Glass at that time, nobody even bothered, because a lot of developers refused to create products for that. But now that Apple is into that, I'm foreseeing that soon you will have a very VR, very slim, and glass that can sync directly with your smartphone without even using wires and all that.
It seems that you read my mind. Actually, I was going to ask you about the Google Glass project, and you have raised that. So I am happy to hear that Apple is going to continue
because
that.
Google was quite angry when
Yeah.
Apple decided to take the name as well, because they call it Apple Glass. But I'm not sure whether they're going to change the name. But but yeah, Google was the one who started all right. And the problem with all this hardware is you need people to provide content. And when developers refuse to do it, you don't have content, you die off. Yeah. Just like VR, if you go to Oculus store now, there are less than 100 like really established VR materials or VR games or whatever. So who on earth would like to buy one? I mean, why do you need to invest one when you only have like 100 things to play with? Like, there's not much for you to venture into. So people don't really buy all this headgear. Maybe soon, yeah. I don't know, but yeah. How will I answer that, Mr. Hasnai?
Yeah, of course. I think it was really exciting to hear all that list and all. Perfect. And wish you all the best for your PhD you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Just to complement what you have highlighted, how we could mimic LMS to real life. I think Fazil did a very good job in mimicking our IMU campus and converting it as a virtual lobby in LRF.
Oh, okay.
So maybe you got chance. I think it's Cosmo something space. Just now you mentioned the name.
Yeah, Como Space. Yeah.
Como space. Yeah. So he used that and quite nice. But sad
In fact,
part. Yeah.
I personally think Kumo Space and Gather Town, these two has potential to be, if the company is serious, they should make it the future of learning management system. Because I personally used Gather Town last year with my student. They love it so much, just that because I was the only one using it. The other lecturers are not using it, so they feel like they just enter only for my class or only for my course. So imagine if all the lecturers or in the campus are using it. You have your own metaverse only for your universities, and it's like I go to your university but in a virtual space. So I think that's the future that the students are heading. It's just like how they log into all these games where they experience Minecraft and all that, but now they are logging into a space where they can learn together. They can do their own discussion group, group discussion, and and all this thing. Yeah, but it has potential. I mean, if you're really serious, you can still venture into go deeper on the Kumo space and build bigger one. Okay, I think my time is up, so I'll end here. Thank you so much, everyone.